Sup everybody, this is Carrick with ACG, and it's my continuing real and virtual mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullshit. And today it's going to be the Past Future, Future Past extraplanetary dinosaur world exploration game for the PSVR, known as Robinson the Journey. And Robinson the Journey will be out on the PS4 and PS4 Pro on November 8th. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Robinson the Journey. Every robot in the future is a beach ball, N64 textures in today's world, and entering the land of the truly lost. Graphics are up first. So the moment you step into this dinosaur land, one of the first things you're going to notice is that the landscape and the lighting in Robinson is actually really good. It doesn't look bad at all, and even in some locations up close and personal, which is a very dangerous distance for VR titles, it looks good. Like sitting back near a monolithic tree trunk and watching strange looking creatures crawling all across its bark, which is straight up going to give some people the shivers. Very cool stuff. But the devil is in the details, and in this case, the lack of details, especially with some locations and textures looking so decidedly last gen, it'll have you wondering if maybe the PSVR has a little N64 shoved inside of it. Some of these textures are just downright terrible. Now, while the lighting engine does do a fantastic job hiding much of that and looking over into the vista of an alien world that for some reason the developers decided shouldn't be alien at all, but just sort of prehistoric, can actually look amazing. But there are times and there are places where you will see that facade of alien-like beauty sort of melt away in the sheer face of gaming's oldest nemesis, which is image quality. However, it's not all bad. Artistic design and representation are very good here, from the main character's little treehouse made of destroyed spaceship parts and bad memories of people dying, to the robotic helper, and even to the dinosaurs themselves, which, without a doubt, don't look half bad most of the time. And obviously, while the normal VR sections seem to have all the weaknesses and strengths that I think we of the huge nerdy headgear have sort of come to expect, there is one absolutely rockin' option that we have to talk about, and that's the fact that some robot that travels with you and the entire game world switches to his view, which is a giant goddamned amazing looking Land of the Lost diorama. To say that view is awesome is like saying awesome is well below average as a starting point. It's insanely cool, and they use this toy filter, which means it doesn't look like the main game at all when you're in it. Hell, I'd probably pay for a diorama game right now. You don't use it all the time, but when you do, it's Fred Flintstone time. Unfortunately, as a package though, many places Robinson just misses more than it hits, from horrendously bad textures to poor animation on your little Tyrannosaurus best friend, to moments where you notice that the picture being piped to your TV social screen looks immensely more clear and easy on the eyes than the one you as the VR player has to deal with. When you look at it altogether, it's pretty amazingly average, though there's some highlights here and there, of course, one of those being the Riggs view. And that brings us to sound, music, and voice.
Oh, there it is. Get it to drop that ball before it destroys the thing. It's not like we can buy another one.
Come on, Laika. Don't worry about Higgs. I just gotta work on your training so that he doesn't blow a fuse.
Oh! Oh, be lunch by now. See? Raptors.
And of course, sound is up first in this trilogy of audio awesome, and this is good and presented through the PSVR's earbuds, or whatever ones you end up using. There's directional audio and environmental sounds, and they're excellent. And the first time you hear the scaly slicking away of a snake that looks like Bob Ross got a hold of it on a bad day, you will probably be pretty impressed. Also, it can shock the shit out of you the first time a dinosaur attempts to make you tomorrow's poop pile by leaping up from the ravine to see if it can grab onto one of your feet. It's excellent use of sound to evoke atmosphere. Really, really well done. Everything from the dinosaurs to crumbling spaceship parts piles to old machines coming back to life. Really good sound. And that brings us to voice. Now, this actually isn't that bad. It's got Robin, your robot voice helpers, and various voice logs, and the voices are all average to good and tell the story of the situation as it happens. While you and Higgs, the robot helper, explore the locations, it's funny sometimes to hear some of the AI's various thoughts on the situations, especially when he thinks that yelling at flying dinosaurs will suddenly have them go, you know what, I don't understand English, but it certainly makes sense for me to stop because of this floating volleyball screaming at me. It's actually pretty good voice overall. And of course that brings us to the big dog, which is gameplay. So first a bit about the story. The spaceship Esmeralda crash lands on the planet Tyson 3, and you as Robin must find out what happened to the folks that were on the ship with you, exploring with Higgs, the terribly boringly named robotic helper that is one of a series of Higgs you search for in the game to find out information. Now what follows is Robin basically moving from section to section and repairing small items, gathering items, or identifying items, and then moving to another section, and then repeating it all again, all the while trying to pretend you're not repeating it. And that's a sad thing, because it's not open world, it's like open Boy Scout trail, as you follow the trail of various locations and then explore them, prompted by either your robot helper or seeing some shiny thing and wanting to get closer to that shiny thing. It's really oddly repetitive, to say the least, because you're scanning in creatures into this universal library by sort of staring at them, and you realize about 15 minutes in that every area is probably going to roll out identically to this. Now, while there is a lot to catalog, the fact that going into any menu is also a bit laggy and slow and has a number of absolutely no reason for being there pauses means that you won't really want to scan and look at a creature right away in this universal library. Now, when you do, it's actually pretty cool, as there are 3D models that you can zoom around, which is nice, but it's also a little confusing because you end up scanning what appears to be 455 dragonflies, and you really can't figure out why the computer doesn't just finally say, "Good job, Robin, you're done molesting the insect life." Another thing you do is some puzzles, and you use gravity to your advantage with this special move controller looking wand you carry, which makes the game's non-acceptance of the wand as a controller device even more peculiar, though they said a patch is coming at some point. Now, these small puzzle moments would probably break up a bit of the gameplay loop if they weren't as rote as they currently are. But the real issue here is control. There's a reason you landed on a planet called Tyson, because this game is going to have an even better knockout record than he did, because it has some of the most advanced and almost downright on-purpose motion sickness-inducing controls I have ever seen. Taking the PSVR off was like living in a recreation of the damn Jonestown massacre, as my friends lay strewn around the living room in various states of agony after I had been dumb enough to invite them over to try the game out. Online reports from users who got the game early is this stream of consciousness about how bad VR sickness can be. Go look at it. Some won't get it, but many, many are. And you guys know me, I have to figure out what the cause is, and for me it's based solely around the movement, which isn't teleporting, but instead is this roller coaster without G-force kind of movement that reminds me of Faded for PC and PSVR, a second lunch-inducing pile of steaming whatever you just had. If anybody has played that, you know what I mean. Now, while the game here is noticeably slower at moving than Faded, it's the turning and exploring, two things you have to do in a game about exploring, that ends up causing the issue. You see, you have a couple different options here, and they're called pie chart, which is like moving 15 degrees in whatever direction, then freezing instantly in place like a damn socket wrench. And then you also have pie chart continuous, which is pretty much the same thing, but it sort of stutters between movements. And then you have a version known as smooth, which by far is the one that's being reported as absolutely fatal to most people's stomachs. Now, I was able to figure out a system of options that somewhat worked, but none of it feels mature. And then you start moving forward and something else goes wrong, because we have a segmented turning and slow drift towards where you're looking as you walk forward movement. Now, that sounds like a great fucking plan, doesn't it? As you slowly go off center and then use the stick to bam, jerk you back around 15 degrees, so now you're just off center to the other side as you begin listing to port like a damn syphilis-ridden sailor running back to the good ship Penicillin. And then you end up doing it again and again and again. Following a straight line in this game is almost damn near impossible. The thing is, regardless of how you stumble through the game, it's only also about 3.5 hours to 4 hours long. It's actually quite short. Now, I want to talk about Presence before I move to Fun Factor. Presence is that feeling of being there, delivered by good camera work, as well as keeping the game world from falling the fuck apart with things like clipping and other odd situations when a character gets too close to something in a VR game. Now, I'm not going to lie, at times it was nauseating, but I was able to play for some time in smaller areas, and that presence while doing so was very, very good, given this full lived-in feel and I'm there kind of situational awareness that I actually really liked. Crossing the tar pits was very intriguing, as third-person 3D game world puzzles sort of take on this completely different tact in these kind of situations. So presence-wise, it was actually good, aside from, once again, some of that sickness that popped up for a lot of people. Fun Factor. Sadly, you know what, with the repetition and everything, it's just not that fun, and it's stunningly short for a game that's $40. It's less, like I said, than 3.5 to 4 hours. Fun's usually a combination of excellent control, interesting environments, and intriguing gameplay loops, along with that learning curve. Here, unfortunately, that repetition eats away at you quickly, and even if you find a control scheme that works for you, every single little place has you performing the exact same road activities over and over. Now, exploring isn't so bad, I admit that, but due to the general sedate movement speed, it takes forever to get somewhere, as you realize this kid must have been overdosing on marijuana suppositories prior to exploration. It's insane. Just really overall, not that fun. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. This is actually a rent or wait for a deep, deep sale on PC. VR needs saviors and a real quick, big game, because there haven't been. The natural progression of excellence that I think we expect in full games isn't here in many of our VR contemporaries. And in the end, we want a successful peripheral, and we want one that's backed up by games, and we really haven't seen that as of yet. So that's it for me. If you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter or Patreon. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. And remember, if you want reviews that aren't 2 minutes long and filled with sponsored bullshit, stick with ACG. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.